Hello friends and fellow readers, what's up? I've decided, because I'm not going to do wrap-ups anymore, that I'm just going to review singular books as I go if I feel like they are worth discussing, especially if they're relatively new releases. So first up, I just completed this today, and that is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This is an adult horror, paranormal, mystery, thriller, contemporary. There's a million different tags on Goodreads. If you look on Goodreads, I would categorize it as adult horror. So this is a story about 4 different American Indian men who 10 years previous to current day within the novel, we'll just say they committed this unspeakable act that they knew better than to do. And from that, the guilt and the aftermath of it follow them through their lives. So when you start this book, you're getting the very first man and the first interaction he has with the vengeance that comes for these 4 men for the thing that they did. It's the first chapter. It happens very quickly, and you see it's a good snapshot as to how the rest of the book is going to play out. Then you move on to the next of the 4, and you see a bit of the story from their perspective. And then the last third of the book is the final 2 guys. So this whole novel is about each individual man and what happens to them down the road after this one incident that kind of defined the rest of their lives. At the end of this video, I'll give a little bit more spoilery into the story if you want to talk further about it down below, but that's the synopsis. As was listed, there is some paranormal elements to it, but I don't want to give away what happened in that moment to have this entity come after them. It is much better to go in a little bit blind as to what is happening in that regard. That said, how did I feel about this book? I ended up giving it a 3 stars. That said, I really enjoyed the concept of it. The premise of it was amazing. The idea behind the ritual that happened and then the vengeance that was taken out upon the people was gruesome and very shocking, and I didn't really know what was going to happen next. And I love how that all piled up together. The voice that Stephen Graham Jones used to express dialogue amongst characters was really, really great, very real. It felt genuine, and the word choices used seemed like he did a lot of research on reservations and the way in which American Indians speak to each other. The pacing started out really well for me. I really enjoyed that first character as well as the second. The second character we get the perspective of was probably my favorite of the whole story, but it started to slow down a little bit in that you were getting a little bit too much while also not getting enough. And the scenes that were gruesome and horrific and that made this book what it is were so fast-paced and intriguing, and they drew you in. But then there was a lot of, I don't want to call it filler, but the plot did not move together well enough, in my opinion. I would use the word jilted a little bit. There's a little bit of jilting going on throughout this book. However, I really did enjoy it, and I think that it is worth checking out, especially if you like basketball, as this was a very basketball heavily influenced narrative, and it played a very large role in the second half of the novel. So if basketball is a sport that you thoroughly enjoy, it would really play into your enjoyment of this novel, I think. I'm not a big basketball fan, so when it went into a lot of scenes regarding basketball and getting into detail about moves or like the progression of someone who's good at basketball through their youth, I didn't care as much. That didn't affect my rating overall, because not everyone is going to love every sport, and it wasn't a huge factor in the overall plot, but it did make for harder reading in those moments for me. It was a good novel. If you are looking for like a gory but own voices representation of American Indian folklore mixed into modern day horror, I think that this would be a very good book for you to check out. Again, I give it 3.5 stars. The voice is very unique, and I would pick up more work from Stephen Graham Jones. Trigger warnings for vicious animal abuse and obviously lots and lots of gore. Now I'm gonna hit up some spoilers real fast, and that is that I got a little confused some of the time as to what the point of it all was, Maybe it is because I am not American Indian, and so I'm gonna try and find some reviews from Ownvoices that I can link down below in the description box, but I didn't really understand. The big thing that happens is that these four men go when they're teenagers and they hunt this group of elk that they're not supposed to. It's in an area they're not supposed to. There's a gamekeeper. They're trying to like do this, like undermine, and they kill, like they go on a shooting spree, and they kill one of these elk and find out that she's pregnant, that she's carrying a baby, but she was so juvenile herself that they didn't anticipate it. And that elk comes back for them. It grows into like an elk woman and comes for each individual person. The first one, the death is really short. She gets him kind of involved in this like bar scene, and because of racism, the white people basically beat the shit out of the one Indian man until he dies. So then you hear about that. That's really fast. But then you move into Lewis, who is the most interesting of the four, in my opinion, because you get more of his home life and his work life, and he's juggling his wife of 10 years who is not Indian, and they've left the reservation, and he's going slowly crazy thinking about this elk that he's killed and how things are starting to happen weird in his life. In any case, and then you get the final story of the last two Indian men who are grieving the death of the previous, of Lewis, when all of their stuff goes wrong with the elk woman showing up. I just didn't really understand her vengeance and why like she was able to embody a human and come after them. Like, what was the intention? They couldn't have been the only people in the world to have killed elk before, pregnant elk even. And even though they weren't supposed to be there at the time, it was the last day of hunting, so technically it wasn't fully illegal. It was just supposed to be meant for like the elders, not the teenagers. So I guess my biggest gripe with it, besides the pacing being a little off for me, was that I just didn't really understand the why of it, which was kind of the whole point of a book, right? Is you want to know the why. So that's why I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't bad by any means, and it's a pretty quick read, so I would highly recommend checking out if any of that sounds good to you. But that's it for me, and let me know down below if you've read this or if you intend to check it out. Is it on your TBR? And yes, The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. 3.5 to 3 stars.